Hi, this is our SAT vocabulary list number 22. Please take Cornell notes, writing the word, the definition, and the part of speech, as well as any of the examples I say that will help you to remember what these words mean. So the first word is acquit, and acquit is a verb, and it means to free or clear as from an accusation. So really what it is to relieve someone of some kind of charge or fault or crime that they have been accused of and declare them not guilty. So if you see a trial and someone is basically told that they're free to go, they've been acquitted of a crime, that means they're free to go. It's been proven that they didn't in fact do whatever it was that they were accused of doing. And you can hear the noun form a lot of times if you're watching shows on television that have to do with court cases and legal issues and trials. You'll hear the word acquittal, which is the act of acquitting, the act of freeing someone from a charge or declaring them not guilty. The second word is arid, and arid is an adjective. It describes something that is very dry, and typically it's something that's very dry because there's no moisture. It's parched. A lot of times arid will be used to describe a landscape or maybe a piece of farmland that's barren, it's unproductive because there is a lack of moisture. So arid just means any place or anything that is extremely dry, parched, without moisture, and perhaps referring to some kind of a landscape in which nothing can be grown because there is no moisture there. There's no water to feed the plants, the earth, to make it moist enough to make it productive. Number 3 is conspicuous, and someone who is described as conspicuous is clearly visible, they're noticeable, they're easily observed, they're easy to see, maybe they even attract attention. So if you're in a restaurant and someone has kind of a booming big voice or a really unusual laugh, they will be conspicuous. You're going to notice them. They're going to kind of stand out. Whereas, if you see someone walking into a restaurant wearing this getup, definitely conspicuous, right? You're going to turn around, you're going to look, why is this person wearing a costume in a restaurant? 4 is encroach. It's a verb, and it means to invade partially or insidiously, and to kind of, it almost means like to get in someone else's space or to go beyond what's considered proper or kind of usual in terms of limitations. So I have a desk in the corner of my classroom. I don't usually sit down at my desk, but if I'm working at my desk during break or lunch and a student comes and they get really, really close to me and my chair inside the little corner of my room where my desk is set up, I almost feel like they're encroaching on my physical space because some students will get really, really close to ask a question. A lot of times when you're out in public, people might, if there's a line, people might stand really close to you and it almost feels like, wow, this person is way too close to me. They are encroaching on your physical space. And so to think of encroach is to invade. This definition is kind of overly complicated. So just to think of someone invading your space or going beyond kind of the proper, established, or kind of usual limits for something. This is a good example. This woman does not seem to like that this man is next to her, leaning on her. Perhaps he fell asleep and he's encroaching on her space. A lot of times when I'm on an airplane, sometimes I'll feel that way. Someone will kind of fall asleep in their seat and then lean on me and it's encroaching on my space, my seat, my area of the airplane. Number 5 is horde. It's a verb and it means to gather, to store away for the sake and purpose of accumulating. And so when you're trying to accumulate something, you're trying to get a larger amount of it. So, squirrels will hoard nuts and things and store them away for the winter because they're trying to accumulate. They want an accumulation of food for the winter. My daughter learned this word very, very early, and she would accuse her younger brother of hoarding toys, which basically meant that he was taking lots and lots of toys that he didn't necessarily need or wasn't even playing with so he could use them later. And then you'll see some people who are homeless, they're out on the streets, and they're definitely trying to kind of hoard bits and pieces of things off of the streets, maybe out of trash, that they can use because they don't have a whole lot. 6 is insidious, and this is an adjective. It describes something that's working ill or does something bad by slow or stealthy, kind of secret means. And so you could describe kind of a disease as being insidious. Some diseases, some forms of cancer, they work very slowly and they're stealthy. They're kind of secret. They're hidden. We don't find out about them until sometimes it's too late for them to be treated, right? Sometimes somebody who's kind of crafty or deceitful, maybe they have an insidious plan. So right now I'm watching House of Cards with my husband, and the whole show, it really revolves around all of these really insidious plans that are happening in government. So thinking about, like I said, something that's kind of sneaking up on you, it's kind of stealthy, it's doing ill, it's doing bad things, and a disease can be very much like that. Lucid is also a describing word, and it describes someone who is mentally sound. And not only mentally sound, but if you ask someone who is lucid a question, they're going to give you a very clear, understandable, intelligent, kind of comprehensible explanation. If they're lucid, if they're mentally sound, if they're kind of with it, they're going to give you an explanation that makes sense. And so again, another hospital scene, but this woman looks very alert. She's making eye contact with the doctor. And if she's, had some medical condition or maybe surgery, he's checking in with her. I would expect someone who looks like this to give him a very lucid response or to be quite lucid. Number 8 is obsolete. Something that is described as obsolete is no longer used, no longer practiced, or no longer accepted. So a lot of times the things that we use become obsolete because new things are developed that are even better. And so a great example of that for me is the tape recorder. I have some really old tapes from when I was a kid, but it's so hard to find a tape player now because tapes have become obsolete. So my kids don't really get to listen to some of the Winnie the Pooh stories that I have on tape because there's no way to play them because tapes have really become quite obsolete. 9 is protrude, and it's a verb. It means to push out or to thrust forward. I also would say to kind of stick out, something that protrudes, it kind of sticks out, it's pushing out. And a lot of times things that are protruding can be quite conspicuous and noticeable because they're kind of sticking out from whatever is around them. So a good example would be these beautiful rocks protruding from the ocean. They're thrusting out, they're sticking out, they're very noticeable in the ocean. Repugnance. This word to me sounds like its meaning. So something that is repugnant, that describes something that we find very distasteful or we don't like. And repugnance is the noun, which is just the thorough dislike you have for something. So different people experience kind of repugnance when they encounter maybe someone they don't like or a food they don't like. And the expression on this woman's face looks to me like thorough dislike. Whatever she is staring at, she is not happy with. 11 is solicitude. And solicitude is a noun. And unlike repugnance, which to me sounds like a bad word, solicitude almost sounds like a pretty word. And so it's one of those words that I remember when I first learned it, I had to really try to remember what the definition meant because it didn't sound like a negative word. But solicitude actually means an uneasiness of mind that is caused by some desire or some anxiety or some fear. And so thinking about the state of being worried, anxious or concerned. And so when you're in high school and you're applying for colleges, you might experience or show great solicitude about your college applications. There's all kinds of things that arouse this anxiety and concern in different people. And this picture of this woman is so, clearly she's in a state of anxiety, but she just looks like she's so just over the top concerned that she's about to lose it. 12 is tact, and tact is a noun, and it's described as fine or ready mental discernment shown in saying and doing the proper thing. I find this definition to be unnecessarily long and unnecessarily convoluted. So how I would describe tact is kind of a keen or sharp sense of what you should say or do or avoid saying or doing when you're talking with someone so that you don't offend them. So if you're really good at saying the right thing or doing the right thing so you avoid offending people, then you have really good tact. It's a skill in dealing with delicate situations. My husband always says I have no tact because I say whatever comes to my mind. He actually calls me the woman with no filter because I just tend to say whatever I'm thinking, and people with tact don't do that. They think about the situation. They think about how is what I'm about to say going to impact other people. So it's a great thing to have tact, and maybe not so great a thing that I don't have a lot of tact. And here's a man, maybe he's talking with this older couple about their, what they want to do for their will or what they want to leave their family. Whenever you're talking to people about kind of life after, they're going to die, what's going to happen to their possessions, who's going to get what, that's kind of a really sensitive topic. So you'd want someone with a lot of tact to deal with people who are planning for the things that they're going to leave to others or how they're going to handle, preparing for their own death. 13 is vacate. This is a very simple word, and it just means to leave. And if you think of the word vacation, right, which is a noun, you go on vacation, you leave, and you go somewhere else. So when you vacate, you just leave. So people vacate their houses, they're leaving their houses. Clearly, this is a picture of people who are vacating an area. It looks like somebody has been injured. He's being put on a helicopter to be vacated out of the area. 14 is demure, and someone who is demure this is an adjective, so someone who's described as demure would be considered very modest, reserved in their manner or their behavior. And so I chose a picture of a woman who's all covered up, her hair is covered up, she's wearing this long coat, very demure, dressed very conservatively. And the last word is fervor. And fervor is a noun, and it is the great intensity of emotion that is experienced. It is an intense kind of heat that is experienced. Oftentimes, people who are at a really high-stakes sports game, like the NFL championship or the NFL playoffs are happening right now. People who are at those games will experience fervor, right? This great intensity of excitement or concern or anxiety as they watch their teams play. You think about the holidays which have just passed, and there's also kind of that people experience this fervor as they're shopping too. Like everyone's running around stores, they're trying to get the best deals, they're buying things right and left to grab, toys for their kids, and it can be a real, you can definitely experience fervor in those moments.